Good afternoon, morning, evening, night, whenever you find a way to see or listen to this podcast. It's my mom calling. Got to call her back. But um, so this week we're here to discuss with Duane, friend of the podcast as usual. Sure, all familiar with Duane. But earlier this week, Arkansas Pine-Bluff released their schedule, and they kind of snuck in on October 16th a game against Alabama A&M at the Edward Jones Dome, or I mean, in St. Louis. I would assume it's Edward Jones Dome. I'm not sure if they put that as the actual site, but I don't think they'll be playing at Busch Stadium. Um,
They
they
won't
they added
be.
that. Oh, go ahead, Dwayne.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Omar. They won't be. It will be at the Dome, but the Dome now has a new name. It's
Oh,
the Dome at America Center.
okay, right, okay, yeah. So lest I call it the wrong name. Yeah, I knew it was like. I mean, everyone knows it's like the Edward Jones.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like
You know what?
so.
The people in St. Louis probably thinking the same way that you're thinking. Mama named it Ed Jones. I'm gonna call it Ed Jones.
Yeah, the dome seems so generic. I mean, the dome at American Center seems generic, but I mean, a huge game for Arkansas Pine Bluff, and the second neutral site game that they have this year is they're playing the SWAC Classic against Jackson State, which, if I'm not mistaken, is in the final week of regular season play of the FCS season. So, two huge neutral site games for this program that really hasn't had much exposure. I don't think they've made an appearance in the MEAC SWAC Challenge at all.
No.
And if they have, exactly. So no appearances there. So just two big neutral site games, two, I guess I won't say high profile games, but sort of marquee games for the SWAC schedule. So I guess first off, what are your initial thoughts with this, Duane?
It's interesting, right? Because when you first brought this game up to my attention, again, not only did they slip it in, it slipped past me, unfortunately, not unfortunately. But of course, with it still being March and everything, I know that schedules are coming out, but I've also been focusing on basketball and track and field too, and was looking to get back to the schedules as soon as possible. But yeah, when you brought it to my attention, I'm like, okay, St. Louis, interesting site to have an HBCU game. I mean, same thing as Indianapolis with the Circle City Classic, but Circle City has most definitely worked in the Indy, so it's not to say that it can't work in St. Louis. But I also discovered, knowing very little about HBCU games being played in the city of St. Louis, that there was a classic there dating back to 1993. And they were supposed to bring that game back in 2019 between, and I love the way that, well, first and foremost, the amount of information that's out about I think it was then called the St. Louis Heritage Classic back in 2019. There's very little to no information on this game on the internet, and it was back in 2019, which is intriguing to me, but I completely understand why, because the game was canceled. So, I didn't see much advertisement for the game, but with the exception of the one Facebook group that they did start. But other than that, there's not a lot of information on there. But the game before it, which was the let me see if I can get this correct here. The Gateway City Classic also was held in Edward Jones Dome. Like I said before, started in 1993, went on for about 20 years, and seems like it was more so a SWAC versus SEAC situation. And again, we have more of an all SWAC matchup. So I'm intrigued to see exactly what this is going to look like with both fan bases in Alabama A&M and UAPB, both being about 5 hours away from St. Louis.
I mean, it is intriguing indeed. And just adding on to your research as well, I mean, Arkansas Pine Bluff has drawn good crowds for this game, topping, I think, over 30,000 for over half the games. I have about 12 games listed that they themselves played in the Edward Jones Dome. So yeah, they drew good crowds too. The highest crowd was actually a crowd of 45,000 according to newspaper reports against Central State in 96. And I want to say, was Billy Joe coaching at Central State in 96, or was he already moved on?
That is a wonderful question. Unfortunately, I do not have that answer at this exact moment. Let me check and see if I can find it while we're in the process of talking. But yeah, let's but 1996, my guess off the top of my head was that was one of those good years for Central State, so I'm not necessarily too surprised that they probably drew relatively well in attendance around that time frame.
Yeah. So I mean, with that noted, it is a bit interesting that Alabama A&M is the opponent here. I mean, I guess there weren't as many great options regionally. I guess looking back at past opponents that they have had in this classic, Pine-Bluff's played the likes of Howard twice. Howard drawing some pretty strong crowds. Hampton once as well. And then Tuskegee as well in the mid 2000s, and Tuskegee drew some pretty good crowds, including almost 36,000 in '05. So with that in mind, I guess, do you see Pine Bluff sort of targeting more of these HBCU brands? Do you see them bringing Grambling to St. Louis for one of these games? Or I guess, is there a way that they can, I guess, optimize their opponent that they play in St. Louis?
Well, if this is going to be a classic that's going to be centralized around UAPB, it would behoove them to draw the likes of either Grambling, Jackson State, or Southern to that game, especially with the way that we already know that Grambling and currently Jackson State's fan base will travel to go see these matchups. And then, of course, with Southern and their name notoriety and their brand that they currently have, well, that they've always had, those would be the three schools that I will most definitely look to attach to potentially move that game to the city of St. Louis, so you can go ahead and try to have as large of a turnout as you possibly can if you continue to have that game in the dome of America's whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm just going to stick with Edward Jones, the Eddie Jones Dome, so I won't continue to mess that name up. And I'll go ahead and correct myself. I should be ashamed of myself. I should know that back in '96, Billy Joe was at FAMU. How dare I not know that? Because, of course, that was during my time. As I'm sitting here wearing an A&T hoodie, I should be lambasted for not knowing that Billy Joe was at FAMU in '96. How dare I? So, yes, shame on me for not being completely aware of that. But, yeah, he was at Central State up until '93. And but to your point, like I said before, it would be to their best interest if they want to continue to have this as an all SWAC matchup to go after one of those three institutions to face them in that matchup. But I already know, based upon what's going on with the Southern Heritage Classic, it's going to have to be in the fiscal benefit of Jackson State to make that travel and go there. Because I see now, especially with Coach Sanders being there, that's something that they're going to most definitely think about before they decide to do any other classics in any other states, to make sure that it makes sense for them financially.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and on the Jackson State note, I mean, everyone's pulling at them from all directions too.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, like I mean, we haven't even mentioned the Gulf Coast Challenge, like a new game that has Jackson State playing in, like that they're playing in as well. How they're pulling at them as well. I mean, like I guess a classic of less repute than the Southern Heritage Classic, and shoot, I guess the SWAC Classic doesn't really have as much reputation, but it is run by the conference. So it is within their benefit to play there. So that's a great point.
It's run by the
as
conference, and the money that according to I'm gonna go ahead and say Coach Prime said it. According to Coach Prime's data, it's something that financially makes sense to them. You know, they said that they're already making, I think they said the number was $3 million, and the check has already been sent, according to him. So yeah, it already makes fiscal sense for them to go ahead and play in that game, and to do that. So if the Gate City can go ahead and I'm not going to say necessarily match that number. I already know that they probably won't have $3 million to give Jackson State alone in order to play in that game. But if they can make it beneficial to the Tigers to travel, they'll end up doing it potentially.
Even for just a one-off, I mean, just I guess a new experience for that fan base is heading to St. Louis. I can't imagine how often they do travel there. I also want to ask you, in terms of opponent, like, do you see a sort of either Langston or Lincoln making an appearance in the game? Because I guess in terms of travel, in terms of cost, I mean, those two schools, I mean, I think they make the most sense. They definitely aren't huge brands, but they are locals. There are local programs that don't really have the exposure. And I know Langston had a couple of games against Grambling, maybe just one, at Arrowhead Stadium. So there is appetite for that fan base to travel to these big cities and NFL venues.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I that matchup you just said between Lincoln, Missouri, and because I wanted to go ahead and make sure I got that correct as well. But again, for whatever reason, that game in St. Louis there's not a lot of information out there on it. And when it said Lincoln University, and I'm trying to figure out exactly which Lincoln they were referring to, I did discover that it was, of course, Lincoln of Missouri, not Lincoln, Pennsylvania. And then also discovering that their game in 2019, like I said earlier, was canceled. So to your point of closeness of proximity, yes, it makes great sense because Lincoln is one of the closest, if not the closest HBCU to St. Louis. And then, of course, there's several other HBCUs that are in that area, but of course, all of them are about 4 hours away. Like you said, Lincoln. Also, and I'm naming HBCUs that have football programs currently. Tennessee State. I want to go ahead and say Lane is nearby. That's another option that they can look at too. If you're talking about potentially a Lane option and maybe even a Lane in Kentucky State. Kentucky State is relatively close by as well as so yeah, Lane, TSU, Kentucky State, and Lincoln are the closest. And then of course you have Fisk, Meharry, and Lemoyne Owens that don't have football programs, but it would be nice for those students and alums of that area to go to St. Louis and potentially go to the game as well.
Absolutely. I mean, just plenty of options there too, like more than one would think, I guess, I guess Midwest. I guess St. Louis is the Midwest. But I guess, fan base is a concern for those schools. I'm not sure about attendance numbers at the D2 level, and I guess NAIA for Lynx. I think Lynx's NAIA, if I'm not mistaken. At that level as well. But maybe something for them to explore. I mean, I don't think that. I guess given the circumstance of the schedule, I don't think Alabama A&M was like a strange choice, but it's not optimal. I mean, I don't think the Bulldogs. I don't have any information about them traveling well, but. I think that's a tough trip for them to ask out of going all the way from Huntsville to St. Louis. And I mean, again, I guess it's not a sort of school that would inspire, I guess, like the local crowd to come out, especially with the Quill Glass gone, and them sort of taking a step back this last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens with that team. Of course, Coach Maynard is looking to rebound that program after their performance from this past season. And then, of course, with Akil Glass not being there, with him leaving the program and graduating. I want to make sure I say graduating program. With the transfer portal, whenever you say a guy's leaving, nowadays you never know why he's leaving, but he's graduating from Alabama A&M. Hopefully he gets an opportunity to go pro. With as quarterback hungry as NFL teams are, I wish that someone would go ahead and take a flyer on this guy who, in my observation, is, of course, NFL ready with his pocket presence and ability to throw the ball. But that's a whole nother conversation for another time. Since we're talking about the St. Louis Gate City Classic here, like you said, both, and I think I may have said it earlier too, with UAPB and Alabama A&M being about 5 hours away and not being necessarily hugely known entities. I don't know what their draw would currently be in the city of St. Louis, but to have two HBCUs there, two HBCU bands performing there, I'm gonna go ahead and say would hopefully help that attendance there. But my thing is, of course, with it being in the Eddie Jones Dome, my hope for this game at least is that if they continue to want to do this and they want to go ahead and continue to have this as an ongoing matchup, or at least an ongoing classic, that they may want to rethink moving the game to, I think the name of that company is the Centuri Stadium, which is going to be the home of the St. Louis City Soccer Club, the new soccer team that's going to be moving to St. Louis. That arena, which holds under 23,000, and we've discussed this before many times on our conversations, that of course soccer arenas, the soccer stadiums, that is, are great venues for HBCU football games because of its quaintness and its the capacity of those stadiums to be under 25,000, and which is more so a reachable and attainable goal for attendance, and also, of course, the optics of having a game there in that stadium, making it look more packed if it's going to be broadcasted on television. And then, of course, it's a smaller venue to rent out. So, yeah, I'd say once that stadium is complete in 2023, that would potentially be an option for them to potentially move that game to.
Yeah, definitely. And again, of course, it all comes down to cost too. With I guess those venues being cheaper to rent, which is always key for I guess HBCU programs and programs in general, not just to single them out. I guess finally, before we move on to I guess the bigger picture topic in terms of conferences, what do you think about the Sunday kickoff? I mean, it's weird. I want to say that maybe it's something for like normalcy. I guess so. It's not like they're competing with the Missouri Tigers or UIC or Illinois at Champaign or Urbana-Champaign. So not competing with their games. And I also want to say part of it too is just having football on a Sunday in St. Louis might inspire some people to go, but it is tough. I guess to play college football on a Sunday. Like, I mean, it's not normal. I know Mississippi Valley State and Southern did it this past year with mixed results, but I want to get your opinion on that.
Oh, you mean having a game on Sunday during the NFL season?
Yeah,
let's not forget that. Yeah, because let's not forget that actually I think there were two games in week 0 last year with Tennessee State. I'm sorry. No, it was Tennessee State and Grambling, and Jackson State and Florida A&M in that Labor Day Sunday slot. But of course, not competing against the NFL. I would say to their benefit, being that, St. Louis is not an NFL city, that might be an attraction. But I say with, of course, it being an NFL Sunday, it combined that with the fact that the Rams, yes, even though they're currently in Los Angeles, there's still a possibility that there are still Ram fans in the St. Louis region. And it didn't help that they just won the Super Bowl recently, too. So if they are fans, it might be a little difficult to pull them away from a Sunday if the Rams aren't necessarily playing on a Monday that particular weekend. But yeah, my guess is that they wanted to go ahead and fill a void of no NFL no football on Sundays in St. Louis by having an HBCU football game there, which is also going to be difficult in terms of having beyond difficult if they decide to broadcast that game on a national network, because I know ESPN won't do it on their cable networks. They may do it on ESPN Plus. Matter of fact, it might not even have to be on ESPN Plus. How did I completely forget? Now, I don't know, Omar, if you're familiar with this news, but Byron Allen, yes, that Byron Allen, the former comedian, of course, he's dealt with the with media, of course, with him buying out the Weather Channel and having other networks as well. But I say HBO, I'm so used to saying HBO Go, but HBCU Go, which is one of his networks, which is also going to be a streaming app of his too, will start broadcasting all SWAC, I'm about to call it SWAC, but all SWAC games, and I mean all games, not just football, but basketball, men's and women's, and all of the other Olympic sports as well that are played by SWAC schools. So that's going to be a wonderful outlet for them. Yeah, that was an announcement that was actually made just this past weekend. So it's a game that's going to be broadcasted, and I know that that's something that McClendon, the commissioner, Charles McClendon, the commissioner of the SWAC, said that was he actually said that having an approved presentation for his games was ideal for him to start broadcasting or at least signing some sort of contract or agreement with a potential network to broadcast their games. And with Byron Allen and his financial capabilities to broadcast games, I would say that most definitely was a viable option for him. And then also to make it even better, HBCU Go it's also a free streaming network. So it's not a streaming network where people will end up having to buy a subscription for, and it makes it that much easier for not just HBCU football fans, but college football fans in general to come and watch that game.
Yeah, that's something I overlooked for sure. I mean, television, of course, like we've seen like with the fall in attendance like this year, how I guess television is king when it comes to viewing college football. But yeah, I mean that's an obstacle. But if anything, I feel like that they did have that in mind in terms of I guess it was more for the local audience in terms of more for the local audience than it was for the national audience. The scheduling it on a Sunday. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how it plays out. Because generally, like I guess with last year's game with Southern and Mississippi Valley State, you had a game in a non-NFL market. And I mean, it drew I think a 10,000. So I mean, I'm not sure what expectation people had for the attendance numbers, but drew 10,000. A little bit of different case, of course, former NFL market, but no team. Nothing to do on a Sunday, so it could draw people. So will be interesting to see for sure. But looking at the bigger picture, we have just again the SWAC making more moves for these landmark events, and the MEAC continues to not do anything. But and again, like we see that on the field, like the MEAC hasn't really, I guess, dropped like or hasn't really missed a step in terms of the Celebration Bowl. I mean, with a dominant performance by South Carolina State. But I guess with the SWAC continuing to just have these sort of great revenue generating events, can the MEAC continue to do nothing in your eyes, or does a play on the field talk for itself?
Well, can it? In my opinion, no, it can't. Will they? Is the one I'll go ahead and say probably yes, until they somehow are capable of figuring out a viable option to make a football classic work within that conference. Because let's be real, even though the majority of I'm gonna go ahead and say all of the teams that are currently in the MEAC, well, with the exception of Norfolk State, well, even Norfolk State, they've all the teams have been there for well over 20 years now at this point, but they aren't necessarily in-state rivals or strong neighboring state rivals. Yes, North Carolina and Virginia with Norfolk State and North Carolina Central, and then of course with them two teams being first and second place within the conference last year, might seem like a current day rival for supremacy within the conference, but it's not nothing to hang your hat on in terms of having a huge attendance draw for that game in a city outside of both Durham and Norfolk. The same could be said about North Carolina Central and South Carolina State. Again, a neighboring state game, but I don't know how that would necessarily work like in a Charlotte or in no, it would probably work well in Charlotte because it's close enough in proximity for both of those two teams to drive to. But say if you were to hold that game, say in, I'm trying to think of a neighboring large city on the East Coast, Richmond. How about Richmond? That makes perfect sense in this analogy, right? Say if Norfolk State, and not Norfolk, no, because Norfolk State we call it. Let's say Central and South Carolina State wanted to have the game either in Richmond. How would that work? I don't know if it would. It would probably be beneficial for them to do it in like Charleston or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't see a matchup in the MEAC that would work in an attendance based situation of more than 15,000. And I'm using 15,000 as a minimum to travel in a city that's not in the city where those two schools currently reside, that is not happening in New York and doesn't involve Howard University. I don't see it. I really don't.
I mean,
I know that was a long description to make it make sense, but I hope everybody followed me on that.
Well, I definitely followed. I mean, yeah, it's tough too because I mean, it reaches a point where you're trying to like create these rivalries and like force them to be rivals. I mean, force rivalries to happen. I mean, yeah, the school's been conference mates for a while, but of course, their big rivals when it comes to either like Norfolk State or North Carolina Central have gone elsewhere, and I guess Hampton for that matter, or Howard for that matter too. Like they've gone elsewhere too. So I mean, you don't want to create something that I guess isn't there. I guess for lack of a better term. Something that does fascinate me on this front is this year with the Dukes Mayo Classic with the North Carolina Central and North Carolina A&T. It looks like this will be the headline game for that classic. Unlike I know this year they had the two games, and with App State ECU being pushed to Thursday night, despite being frankly the better game as it shaped out than Georgia Clemson. This looks like Saturday. I mean Saturday afternoon probably. I don't see this being a night game. Saturday afternoon, like this game will be the headliner for that city. But despite them playing for the next for the foreseeable future, Bank of America Stadium only has them scheduled for 2022 and 2027. So maybe this year's a test run for that game, attendance wise. And we'll see, I guess, if Bank of America wants that game to be I guess a leg of the Dukes Mayo Classic, but it's looking like that's unlikely too. I mean, yeah, I just don't see a future where the MEAC does anything like to sort of do their own MEAC Classic. Because if you look at the venues in the region that would make sense, like Legion Field is a venue that's just like, asking to host games, honestly. Like they had the Tuskegee Morehouse Challenge move there this past year. Frankly, I guess not to the benefit, I think, of either school, but that's another discussion for another time. And then the SWAC Classic these next couple of years, like there's no really, I guess, old venues in the Mid-Atlantic that are really like searching for, I guess, new life or just hanging on, really. I mean, if you're going to host something, it's going to be at either, M&T Bank Stadium if you're Morgan State. It's going to be at MetLife, even though they could explore the New York Red Bulls stadium for, I guess, for cost purposes. But again, like that's the outskirts of New York City. I mean, it's in Jersey, not really the same, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you have that as an option. You have, of course, Audi Field for Howard, and they're making that work with Hampton. But yeah, I mean, there's just no sort of Legion Fields that are hanging on for dear life anymore. So yeah, I kind of see them just I guess standing pat. And if anything, I think the MEAC will make its name more in non-conference games. Because I mean, even this year, there's some marquee opponents, at least looking at Central schedule right now, like that game against New Hampshire. The Huskies they've fallen on tough times, but that's still kind of a name brand program in FCS circles, at least I think. At least growing up, I mean, the name I think of, I got to find a new star player to reference other than Ricky Santos. I mean, he's coaching there now, but I always think about Ricky Santos and David Ball, and I think of New Hampshire being a brand name. So yeah, I guess in a long roundabout way as well. Like, I mean, I agree. Like, honestly, like I don't see them doing anything, but depending on the MEAC SWAC Challenge and the Celebration Bowl to sort of, get that wrap up.
Yeah, most definitely. But to your point, well, two things. One, like you've already stated, the Dukes Mayo Classic, of course, have their game set up until around 2027, 2028. With who their opponents are going to be, maybe even a little bit further out than that. But yeah, they went ahead and decided to slate A&T and Central in those 2 years, clearly with those 2 year spots. It's not necessarily a test. I guess it's going to be a test for future dates as they continue to do the Dukes Mayo Classic if the attendance works well with the matchups that they are going to run with for the next 5 years. But yeah, I'll be intrigued to see how that works out. But yeah, to your point, the only other city, the only other stadium, which of course is I think it's now officially closed, that you compared to Legion Field, of course, is RFK that I can think of here in DC. That is an aging stadium that could potentially, again, it's closed. So yeah, I let's go ahead and scrap that part of that. Yeah, because there isn't another stadium within the region that will probably be capable of doing such a thing. But for years, it's always been part of the discussion that in terms of football culture, that the MEAC is nowhere near close to what the SWAC is in terms of how it's seen by its fan bases, in terms of coming out and attending the games, not just within the cities where the universities are, but potentially traveling to another city to go see them participate in a classic. It's nowhere close.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe in this day, like we're kind of overselling the importance of I guess these classics. I mean, I mean, classics come and go. Even there's some that I guess are on the decline. I think, I don't know. I think maybe the Chicago Football Classic may be on the decline after not having a game this past year, or well, yeah, the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe, but again, like it's just sort of I guess an optics thing for a casual fan. Like you see like a big game in a big stadium, you think like you think big time.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we'll see for sure. And it also doesn't help that I guess membership wise, like the MEAC can't have a championship game, where I guess they have like at least that landmark game.
Won't have a championship game. Make sure we get this correct. Won't have a championship game. And real quick, I still find it amazing why they choose not to have a championship game, especially with the way that the SWAC has found a way to properly monetize having a championship game. And the excuses that I keep hearing, well, the main excuse was originally that there weren't 12 teams within the conference in order to do it back when they had 11 teams. And I'm like, you know what? The SWAC was doing it with 10. Why can't you do it with 11? It makes no sense whatsoever. But then they decided that they wanted to try to do it in the spring of 2020 when there was only, I think, 6 teams participating in the spring, only for them to finally drop it and drop everything because they were only left to 3 teams playing in the spring. And then, of course, when asked, hey, you now have an open date, being that the amount of teams in the conference have been reduced, why won't you have it? The answer was no, we're not going to do it, without any explanation whatsoever. So that's just a missed opportunity. At the time with then Commissioner Dennis Thomas, my question is, will Sandra Stills address it and decide to finally make a move and do that game and attempt to make some money from it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, money, I guess optics too, like having a important game on championship weekend. I mean, that does nothing but, helps the conference. I mean, I can easily see SPNU deciding to do a double header for, first, I guess, first the MEAC championship game, then the SWAC championship game, but
Oh,
just a
of
missed
course, that would
opportunity
be
there.
a wonderful concept for them to do that as a double header and market it that way. Makes nothing but sense, right? But a lot of times there are a lot of decisions that are made that are head scratchers, and it just boggles my mind, why won't they do such a thing? But again, hopefully it's an idea and a concept that they look to address.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess for the foreseeable future, I guess I wouldn't say the MEAC's on life support. I do think that things that the Tide has kind of, I mean, kind of, it's calmer, I think. I mean, the Howard to the CAA talk has subsided. I mean, and it looks like to be set aside for the foreseeable future. But I mean, it's just it doesn't help that you're behind your peer conference considerably in terms of revenue and exposure. So maybe they make that up in other ways. Maybe they lean on men's basketball, because I mean they definitely do have the edge in men's basketball. I think. I mean, when I think about Watermark, HBCU programs, I think about North Carolina Central, Norfolk State, and if I'm not mistaken, geez, I forgot who even won the MEAC this year. Man, shame on me. But
it was Norfolk State that won it.
yeah, Norfolk State. Okay, I was about to say that even then, like none of them made it, but even still, like you have teams participating in the postseason too. Aside from them, like you have
Yep, Morgan
Maryland
State
Eastern
was,
Shore.
and
Yeah,
Eastern Shore played in the game too. But you also have key coaches within that conference. With God, I was about to call him by his nickname. I know he is not going to like that at all. But of course, with Juan Dixon over at Central, no, not Central, but over at Coppin State, and then you have Coach Matlock over at South Carolina State, and I'm trying to remember right now Howard's basketball head coach, and it's horrible that it is escaping me at this very moment. That would be Kenny Blakely. Kenny Blankney, I'm sorry. And I should know that, being that he is a local product. He's a DC kid coming from this area. But yeah, with Blakeney, Juan Dixon, Matlock down in South Carolina State, And then, like you said, with Robert Jones in Norfolk State, Moulton over in Central, and then the emergence of Morgan State as well. They are extreme. They're 8 deep, really. I'm sorry, 7 deep, with the exception of Delaware State. And I'm not trying to throw shade at them for going winless within the conference this past season. But you got 7 teams in that conference that are looked at as being contenders in the near future. If they're not a contender, at least turning their program around soon with the greatness of their coaches and their potential of recruiting well to turn that program around too.
Yeah, so I mean, the future is brighter in the MEAC for basketball than SWAC, but I mean that's not what people say. I mean, that's not what people see in terms of, I guess the big picture of sports. Everyone always looks to football, whether it's
always
right
looks
or
at football.
not,
Yeah, right. But if you are of my age, especially within this region, you tend to think of you are always reminded of the Big East Conference and their dominance, especially within this this landscape here in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, especially primarily for basketball, because they weren't necessarily known for their football programs. And it looks like that there's an opportunity and a space for the MEAC to potentially end up competing. And it's sad that I'm saying this, because it's not sad that it's a D2 program, because of course the CIAA has a rich history in basketball, but it looks like the MEAC will probably end up competing against the CIAA in terms of looking to regain its prominence in basketball that it once had. It was most definitely in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it is sad. The same region as well, and I mean, great programs too, as you covered this spring earlier with the CIAA tournament. But again, we'll see. We'll see if the MEAC hangs its hat on basketball in the future, while the SWAC continues to just sort of almost, I want to say, I guess, set up I guess outposts in throughout the country in these big cities with their games. Almost feels like a barnstorming tour, with some of these classics. I do expect them to be in the Chicago Classic, Chicago Football Classic, if that game's played this year. I'm not so sure about the Circle City Classic, but they've made their rounds to that too, so I wouldn't be surprised if they get grabbed up for those classics. But we will see. The St. Louis, the Gate. It's such a long name. The St. Louis River City Classic.
Yes.
The St. Louis River City Classic. Interesting game this year. I'm excited for it. I'm sure a lot of people are too. Other than the reason to make an excuse to go to St. Louis, check that off my list. But an exciting game. We'll see if it's here to stay. But very intriguing. Duane, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, to your point, and well, first and foremost, let me get to the whole. It's just that whole soapbox of the MEAC not having a conference championship game, and of course the fact that they're missing out with not having that game fiscally. But again, for those who have seen me not just here but in the other venues as well, they know that I enjoy chaos in terms of competition, and we already discussed once before. Oh my God, the ability to have a tie within that conference. And it's something that is not new within the MEAC in terms of having a tie. And God forbid you somehow have it, if not a 2, but a 3 or 4-way. Well, it's not going to be a 4-way tie. At most, it'll end up being a 2-way tie within the conference. For a chance to go to the Celebration Bowl again, when you could have a championship game, and now you only have 8 teams, of course, it's going to cause an issue. But moving on from that, get back to the main point, which is, of course, the Gate City. Well, I'm sorry, it is not the Gate City. God, you just said it. This long ass name. The Classic in St. Louis. That's going to be in the Jones Dome. It's going to be an opportunity for the city of St. Louis and the neighboring areas to generate revenue by having an HBCU event there. And it's something that, of course, cities like Atlanta, Charlotte, Baltimore have all benefited from when they have these HBCU events there. So we'll check and see exactly how that actually performs for them. And if it's something that actually does benefit them. It's going to be something that region will be clamoring for within the future, and hopefully it does work out. And I'm going to be extremely intrigued to see how this game it turns out fiscally for that area, and whether or not having it on a Sunday, an NFL Sunday at that, against two, yes, conference opponents, but not necessarily, well, within my eyes at least, huge rivals competing in this game in the city of St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that last point. I mean, you mean to tell me that people aren't clamoring for a rematch of the 2021 spring SWAC championship game?
I
But
know,
yeah.
right?
It was an electric game, but definitely one, I guess, sort of that comes with an asterisk to some, whether wrong or not, I guess, especially given Pine-Bluff's performance in the fall this past year.
The same could be said about Alabama A&M too. So that's the only thing is, if this game would have been played last year, it would have come with a lot more fanfare. And now I'm not going to call it an afterthought just yet, because we really don't know. We have to wait and see exactly how these two fan bases and the SWAC as a conference looks to promote this game. Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess it's not an afterthought yet, but again, yeah, you kind of wish that they capitalized on last year, for sure. And I mean, I'm not going to say anything about Alabama A&M because we did have Troy Lenve, the punter, on the podcast in the spring, so can't say anything about that title. Big moment for the program, but yeah. We'll see if it does draw, and maybe if they're forced to, I guess the organizers in St. Louis are forced to adjust their approach and focus on either regional opponents or national brands. But will be interesting to see for sure. That's really all I have to say. Duane, do you have anything else to add?
No, not at all. And like you won't hear me say anything bad about Alabama A&M either, because of course Coach Maynor, pretty cool with me in the past, and also the fact that he is also an Aggie alum like myself. So yeah, you won't necessarily hear me say anything negative. Well, that's a lie. Let me stop lying now. I was about to say you won't hear me say anything bad about. Let me say you won't hear me say anything disparaging about A&T alums and the university in public, but I may see some things that people might not like. But yeah, that's a little bit different. I get it.
Yeah, all I'll say is, talking about the two teams that were in the SWAC championship in the spring, and and Alabama A&M's national championship in the spring. You won't hear me use the name of a two-word Disney character before to describe those championships. You won't hear me say that, because a championship's a championship.
Yeah, a championship is a championship. It is in a year where everyone, with the exception of Alcorn State, competed within that season. So yeah, I'm not going to disparage them for that either. And they played extremely well. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, I guess on that positive note, thanks for coming on, Duane. Always a pleasure. Always enjoy chopping it up. And until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul.
And in honor of those two words you won't say, see you real soon.
Yeah, there you go.